Once upon a time, there was a handmade box. I don't mean one that featured beautiful inlays and clever secret compartments. Far from it. In fact, our handmade box longed to be such a treasure, with a mosaic panel perhaps, a carved initial, and maybe a sprinkling of glitter even. But this handmade box was made from recycled card from used sewage paper. How glamorous. And instead of fixings that showed a craftsman's skill, it had to be fixed together by you, using the cheapest rivets that a Scandi homewares company could source. So the handmade box was, in reality, a discount line for the likes of students, house moves, or any occasion where a box like that would be destined for a storage unit or discarded pretty quickly. It wasn't even constructed. It was a flat pack box to be handmade, of all things. And in truth, even though the instructions were skimpy, as usual, a monkey could have constructed this handmade box, whilst also eating a banana and tree swinging. I am not being unkind, because I heard and felt and empathised with the sadness of this handmade box. That was hardly a box at all, really. I felt its sense of shame when I unpacked it and riveted it together. And I did try hard not to laugh. This is a box? As it flopped like a fainting Victorian lady on a summer's day whose corsets are too tight. And following the minimal instructions, I did everything I could to make it strong, help it to stand firm and to hold its shape, and, frankly, be worthy of the name box. But it was deeply forlorn, ashamed, I think even weeping. "Don't bother with the contents label," it suddenly piped up, showing more fervour and vim than I had expected. "Don't put anything in me that's important. It would be a waste upon a waste." It broke into full-on sobs then, and there was a sudden nasty whiff of a dirty drain mixed with mouldy bread. It did have a point, and I had not hidden my disappointment all that well. Our faces and voices don't always do what we would like them to have done when we reflect later. Well, that's life. We're not here to be perfect actors. All we can do is try to make amends in cases of offence. So what had been a plan for storing scruffy exercise clothes that would likely never see the light of day again anyway, was revised on that day. My old leggings and goggles were bundled into a bin bag, and I left the box for a moment then, perhaps to regain its composure, whilst I went off hunting. There was no cry of "Don't leave me," because the box, I am sure, felt that being discarded was inevitable. When I returned, there was still a smell of old eggs and the occasional sound of a tearful sniff in the air. So I ran my hands around the box then, gently pulling it together, and, by way of an apology, positioning the contents label with a gold star on it. "Don't!" I heard the box cry. But I had not even started. Into the box I placed my most beloved cards from friends wishing me well over the years, keepsakes and trinkets that are powerful enough to infuse love and to strengthen a sense of self. A post-it note my husband, if he hadn't been gay, has likely forgotten. An engraved keyring from a crazy lovely friend. 2 pebbles from a beach, shaped like hearts that I found next to each other when I was on my own. tiny flash drive shaped like a camera, with my favourite photographs buried deep within it. All these and more were layered up, the strata of my life, compressing treasure upon trinket. Scrapbooks and photo albums and pictures snipped from magazines. An empty bottle of my favourite perfume for special evenings, still with the ghost of a scent. A recipe book with an inscription from a lover I was leaving, and who understood why. "Please stop. If you put any more in, I will burst at the seams." The handmade box was sharper now. Fear can trigger that reaction, but pushing a forlorn soul can be as useful a wake-up call as shushing and soothing. "You're fine." I did laugh openly then. The kind of laugh you pass to a child at the top of a high slide to encourage a letting go. Enjoy the ride. You can do it, even if you're not quite sure they can. The handmade box was making childlike noises then, a sort of whimpering, and I must say I did feel a little sorry for it. But it was also becoming clear, without a shadow of a doubt, that the more treasures I placed in the box, the sturdier it was becoming. My hands ran gently over its sides again. The risk of fainting now was gone. In fact, the flimsy flopping box had become a formidable Victoria. "Shush now," I said. "Take a moment. Do you feel any different?" I asked the box to tune in to its new state. I will admit I'm not a fan of whimpering, as it can build into its own tornado, like yawning. Thankfully, the box went silent, although at that moment I did wonder if our handmade box was working up to a total collapse. "Oh!" That's all it said. Then laughter, the kind of laughter a child passes back to you when they land at the bottom of the slide safely, before they dash off to do it again, again, again. There was one final exchange between us before the handmade box housed its treasures forever. "I'm going to make a deal with you," I said, mindful that panic might just set in once I'd positioned the box in the dark cupboard under the stairs. So I was going to give it something to distract from that. "I'm not going to fill you right to the top." I was smoothing its sides to make it perfectly square now, ready for the lid, finally, to be placed on its four corners and the box to be completely made. The handmade box remained silent, and I noticed that the air was as fresh as a breeze in a field. "The deal is this," I offered. "If I don't fill you, you can shuffle through these things and treasure them up in your own way. Enjoy them. But these things I do need you to protect and hold secure for me." With that, I put the box into its place, next to a similar box that had never piped up or given off even a hint of a whiff of sewage when I'd put it together. There were cables and plugs and adapters in that box, and it seemed happy enough with that. Everything has its place. Occasionally, even now, I do look in my handmade treasure box. In all honesty, I'm more often to be found excavating about in the box next to it, looking for a phone charger or an extension or whatever an HDMI might be. But when I do feel the need to dig through my keepsakes and trinkets that are powerful enough to infuse love and to strengthen a sense of self, I take the box out of the cupboard, and I'm always surprised by how sturdy it feels. But this is the unexpected thing that I will risk sharing, even though it sounds unlikely. Whenever I lift the box's lid, something new is always sitting on the top of its contents, displayed as if to draw my attention to a tiny trinket that I've forgotten, or a perfect inscription that I haven't read in a decade. The box always asks me, in a voice that is far from a whimper, "I don't suppose you have any more?" It's an excellent question.